Craver, the Director of Congregational Development. And so the Co-Lab Conversations, as I said, are an opportunity for us to sort of talk about some things, but with a little presentation at the beginning. So I'm gonna share my screen and show you, I've got just 3 different websites that I think have a lot to offer in terms of opportunities to learn more and to engage in different ways. Some of the things are more clergy specific or professional church leadership stuff, but all of them have accessible resources for everyone. And so 2 of them are church centric, and one of them is church centric but faith formation specific. So we'll look at those. We'll do that first, and then we'll talk about it. But I'm going to mute the 2 of you, and then we'll get started. So here's the screen share. And I'm actually going to start first with Faith Lead, which is, this is a resource presented by Luther Seminary. So they're an ELCA seminary, which means that they are part of the Evangelical Lutheran Church in America, which is in full communion with us. And so they have created this, it's like a social network for professional faith leaders. So there is like a Facebook kind of professional network that you can join and be a part of. So you can get on there, and then there are ways to join different groups based on topics that you're interested in. Find other colleagues throughout the country and probably the world who are working on issues of justice, or who are addressing environmental stewardship, or just different aspects of church life. And you could get into a group that's working on something. Maybe your church has a burgeoning group that's interested in working with homelessness in your area, and you might find other resources that and people who are doing that kind of work, and get some ideas and some support from that community. So that's part of the communities that they do here. You can see, you can get communities that can be cohorts, but can also be learning lab opportunities. So you go through and can find different opportunities for continuing education, or again, cohorts where you can work together specifically on an issue. The Learning Lab is a private social network, so you do have to join, and you can see information that they have there. They also have like weekly Bible studies that you can be a part of, and things like that can aid in preaching and lectionary studies, if that's something that people would be interested in. What I thought was most interesting was the Faith Lead Academy. So they have a variety of online options for education. And you do have to pay for some of them, but many of them I think are quite reasonable for, at least for those of us who have continuing education money. But maybe this is a thing that, as we look forward, what does it look like to develop a fund that lay leaders can access to get training in areas where they would like to learn a bit more. So you can see here they have live online courses. So these are synchronous courses that you go at a certain time online and meet. They also have these self-paced courses. So if you wanted to do that, you could do it in your own time, watching videos that are created for you with different pieces of information. They do also put on conferences. This one's online. I think that they will do more in person as we go along, and get back into the groove of being together. One of the things I thought was really interesting here, that the resources, how they split them up. There are podcasts you can listen to, videos that you can watch, ebooks that you can read. But what they're trying to do is to create a community of practice. So they're trying to give us a lot of opportunity to work together, to talk about different topics, to learn together, because they believe that leads to faithful innovation in congregations. And so the other thing that I think could be really useful is if your congregation wanted to look at and maybe take one of these courses together and think about generosity as a congregation. Now, there are other Moravian organizations like the MMFA that can do that with you. So these are all to work in tandem with where you already are in your congregation. And Dan, I think you already know about Working Preacher, but there's also, Luther Seminary also produces Working Preacher, which is a lectionary-based resource for preachers, but I think could also be really useful to lay members of Bible studies and lectionary groups, so you can get kind of extra commentary on the scriptures that are going to be preached from during the week, whether you follow a narrative lectionary or a revised common lectionary. But there are some really cool resources there that they have that I would commend to you. And then the second website is Fresh Expressions. So this Fresh Expressions is born out of the Anglican Methodist Church in the UK in 2004. And basically they looked at how do we help existing, I think we originally called them like traditional congregations, see themselves birthing new ministry. And so a fresh expression is not meant to like overtake your whole identity, but it is meant to start something new in your midst. And so Fresh Expressions has been growing in a lot of ways. And they have a tremendous amount of training and resources that are available for people who are looking to embrace a new idea for ministry, a new expression of faith in the midst of the faith community. So this website also has training opportunities. So you can pick from here pioneers, local church leaders, regional church leaders, and look at all the events and training that they have. They have lots of options for some of their kind of main ministries. So you can see that up here, Dinner Church and Center for Remissioning. These two are kind of central ministries that they've done. Dinner Church is an option for a lot of different kinds of churches as a new kind of worship service, a new expression of faith in your community and in your congregation. And it has its own full-blown website here, and training and location and information about what does it mean to have dinner church and to be around the table and to worship together in that way. And so if you were interested in it specifically in dinner church, there's a specific website for that. And they also have their own social media network, which is the FX Connect. So it's an app that you download. It has access to articles, video, podcasts, and of course, ways to connect with other users, to talk about ideas and to share those. I think Fresh Expressions probably has even more resources that would be applicable and accessible to lay leaders and congregations, because part of their mission is to connect and inspire people about how to be the church where you are. And so they've got a lot of really cool things that would be worth checking out. As you look at it, you can create an account, download the app, and then be a part of the community. So Fresh Expressions also full communion partners with us, and so the theology and the things that they share, I think, would be really helpful to us. The third thing that I wanted to share, I know it feels like I'm going fast, is called Lifelong Faith. And so there's a book by John Roberto, which is Lifelong Faith. And it is full of really great reflections on faith formation practices in the church. And it goes through so many different levels of what faith formation can look like, from the intergenerational to family to the more traditional models of children, youth, and young adult faith formation pieces. But if you kind of look through the website, it has specific topics that you can look at in terms of, what are you trying to do? Like in your congregation, are you looking to develop a new program? Are you looking to evaluate your current practices? Do you want to find a way to support parents and children at home? Is there just a piece of faith formation that you want to sort of build out or explore? And it is full of resources. This website has more resources than I think the others do that you can download. This is a note about in June, they have these clinics that are full now, but they might do them again, which is that you get a group of people from your congregation and you participate in these 2 clinics. And so somebody helps kind of coach your group through the conversation that you want to have. So like in the first one is designing playlists for faith formation. Your group would talk about your context and your needs, and this teacher kind of coach would help you talk about some specific interventions that might be helpful to you to develop together as a group. So it's a really helpful resource because you get the expertise of somebody in your local congregation without having to go anywhere or to bring in a new speaker. You can meet with them online. One of the gifts of COVID is that we have that option. And the book that this is built on, I think, is a really great resource to have. So if that's something that you're looking at as a clergy person or as a lay leader who's trying to think about what is faith formation, or which is kind of the new lingo for Christian education, what does that look like in your church? And I think here, their emphasis is not only on children and youth. So I think sometimes we hear Christian education and we think, oh, Sunday school, BBS. But what this is talking about is what does discipleship look like? What does it look like to continually form our faith in a lifelong trajectory as we go forward together? And there are also networks that they share for how to be connected. So there are networks of learning that are connected to this website. So for adult faith and family faith practices that you can check out that I think are interesting and might give you some good support depending on what you're looking at. One of the other things that I thought was really interesting was these learning apps. So we were talking earlier about all the things that we learned and all the questions people had about how do you do that? How do you do this other thing during COVID, especially when we were all sort of thrown into the deep end of trying to figure out technology that would help us. So this is just a list of all these different links of different things that you can use, like deck toys is for creating interactive lessons with paths and activities for students to follow. So these are really accessible resources that you can use to create in your faith formation context, tools that can be helpful in doing that. And I think for me, this is just helpful to have these all together in one place, because then you can say, like, I have an idea about wanting to invite the students to create a graphic novel, or to, even to just do a slideshow that they can share with other people. And so some of these things do that pretty easily, and you can get everybody on the same app. Especially with our younger folks, you can get them to try a new app and figure out how to use different things that help, especially in a virtual context or a hybrid context. They can be real gifts to that. So that's, to me, at the end of the day, if it was only this would be valuable to have kind of bookmarked, because it's got that information. There's also a whole page about how to use Zoom and answering questions about basic live streaming and that kind of thing. So as your congregation is looking at that, or training new folks, or looking to expand that now that you've gotten kind of a hold on what you've been doing, there are tools there that you can use and that you can help, that can be helpful in kind of creating what you want to do in your next iteration of that. All three of these websites have webinars that are available to watch or rewatch. And as I said, some of them, there is a cost to them, but that's part of what we pay for is, when you buy books, you support these things. So when we look at our congregational budgets, to think about what kind of resources are we using. These online resources are relatively new. And so thinking about and checking into what does it cost to participate in these cohorts or these events might be a good thing to look at as you're kind of building your budget out, thinking about what kind of support do you need. this particular website I also find really helpful because it has a lot of evaluation tools. It's hard for us to know what we need to do if we're not aware already of like what the impact is that we're having right now. And evaluation is the best tool. The best thing I know how to do moving forward is to say, okay, if we're looking at faith formation in this context, is our faith formation program or practice having the impact we want? Lots of churches are talking about we want more young families, we want more young kids in Sunday school and church. If they're not there, maybe there is something that we could do to shift the way that we program that would make it more advantageous or more effective for them. And maybe not, but we only know that if we begin to ask questions about how is this working for you? What would work better? And so I think they really bookend evaluation in a way that I think is very helpful, so that churches know that asking these questions is not admitting that we are doing a poor job, but it is a part of doing a good job, is always checking in with how are things going? Are we doing this well? Where's our growing edge? Where's the place where we could do a little bit more work? Maybe there are people in our congregation who have gifts and skills that could help us to build out this part or that part of our programming, or reimagine this piece because it doesn't seem to be getting the impact that we want. So those are the 3 websites: Faith Lead, Fresh Expressions, and Lifelong Faith, that I thought I would just share with you today. And then I hope that's kind of a helpful overview. All of them have like about us pages, so you can go and poke around. I did some of that, and I think that's the most useful thing that I found, is that I found a lot of cool things that I didn't know were there because I went and was kind of hunting for, what can I find there to share. So I'm going to stop sharing. And you guys can unmute if you have questions, or I don't know if you've seen any of these things before. Have you used them? They've been helpful.
Well, I have not used these things, but I'm definitely eager to try a few things out here.
Yeah,
it's pretty cool.
Well, one of the things for the social network piece on Faith Lead, if I was thinking about all of us who are not on Facebook, that like if this was a resource that we found really useful, there would be some openness to like maybe having a Moravian clergy group on that social network. So people don't have to be on Facebook, but an actual professional network group could be an option. I don't know. Did you hear anything, Margie, that sounded interesting?
Well, I did. The Fresh Expressions, traditional churches starting with new ministries or expanding on, I'm active in Friends of Moravian Prison Ministry.
Mm-hmm.
And basically, our role is to pay for the Moravian chaplain at the prison because he was cut from the provincial budget. But we've been successful, and God has blessed us with being able to continue to pay a chaplain for 10 years now, and that's wonderful. Now we're beginning to like with anything that grows, people begin to stretch and do their shoulders around, and where we're going now, and we're beginning to look at not just paying his salary, but paying for ministry he wants to do that's not maybe included in the budget elsewhere, to find extra monies and whatnot. And we're doing that. One of the things that Jeff has found that's really effective with the men and women at the jail, that he might have more contact with, a longer contact with than you would expect, as people wait for trial and they can't pay their way out. They're sort of stuck there. They like the comic books the Bible comic books that Kingstone, prepares and presents, and they wait for the latest comic book, Bible comic book. Now, they probably wouldn't ever sit down with the Bible, and they might not be able to read at that level for that long, but they really do like to look at the comic books and see the Bible heroes. Just like when I was in Sunday school and we had, little quarterlies or little pamphlets every week. And I remember King David when he was a little boy with his slingshot. And so I went and got me a slingshot. I thought that was pretty cool. I was good with it too. No need to have one if you can't be good with it, right? But that kind of thing is intriguing to me because we are a traditional church and we are an old church, age related. We have old people, but they're still lively and they still want to do. And right now they're very helpful with prison ministry and other things. Their hearts still see need and how to connect with the way the world is now, as opposed to the way it was in 1956 when I was in Sunday school. It's a different place, and I don't think our membership is ready to just kick back in the recliner and say, cool, I'll write a check. I think they want to do something and expand what they know. And I know my kids point at, they are very good at teaching me that there's a lot to learn yet about, the different races, how our country has come to this point, what's happening now, and what role can we have in awareness.
Yeah. Well, I think some of the tools and in Fresh Expressions, I didn't show you this, but in their books section, almost all of their books are under $15. And so they would be really accessible for like a church study. Like if there was a small group that wanted to explore one, and they're often not huge books, like they're not big, thick volumes of things. But I have found Fresh Expressions to be very accessible, and because they were born out of the UK Anglican and Methodist churches, there a lot of conversation has been about that the UK is kind of a post-Christian culture, which you can read about that and understand what that means. But basically, it means that lots of people weren't coming to these old ancient cathedrals and churches, and so these small groups of people were still worshiping there and trying to figure out what does it mean to be church right now. And they've had this has been very interesting, the projects and experiments that they have kind of invested in. And so I'd be curious for a church like Freeze to see like what ideas might come out of kind of just exploring what other people have done with Fresh Expressions. Because I think that in my experience, it's just been inspiring to be like, oh, we could do that. Like it's not like, oh, we don't have the capacity, we don't have enough people, like that's almost always the case. We don't have enough people, we don't have enough young people, we don't have whatever. But this Fresh Expressions to me shows us that we all have the opportunity to do something interesting. And I just would love to, I'd love to see like, maybe there are books, if there's a book you look at and you think, hey, let's get together and read about it. I'd be interested to hear what people say.
Okay. Well, I was wondering at first why even, what did I think I was, what was I zooming to today? But I have found this to be interesting and expansive to see what's going on. And we really do Heather's a Freeze member too, if she would
Yeah.
unmute herself. Yeah. We really do need to stretch out and not assume what people are interested in and thinking about just because of their age.
Yeah, for sure. Well, that's something that, if y'all get really going at Freeze, I could always come, or somebody could come and share some of this stuff too, and just say, hey, did you know that this was a thing? I know
Yeah.
that's important, I think, to be inspired. So that's what I hope that this would do, at least give you a place to be like, hey, I didn't know this was here, I'll check it out. Because I get both of I think the two first ones, they have an email subscription. You can just get emails from them, and so they'll send you, these are the events that are going on, things to sign up for. And I find that that's been helpful to me, because I signed up for Faith Lead a couple years ago, but then I was in transition with jobs and stuff, and so I hadn't really paid much attention, but I do get their emails, and so I still remember that. And so there were things that, it's not just church related stuff. Like there's a whole branch of it that talks about staff supervision, like managerial kind of things that, we learn very little about in seminary, and churches don't always know how to do that well. In general, we have people that can do the budget, but there are things that we could learn that would be very helpful. And so they package it for churches to say, this is what's helpful to know from these practices that come from the business world, too. So it's not just it's not just about religious life, but it can also be about how do we organize ourselves. Because sometimes I think about, if we could be more efficient on the business side of things. How many of us have been in a meeting that takes forever, 2 hours of a meeting, and we're like, what do we really do? Wouldn't it be nice if we could streamline some of that, not to ignore things that need to be talked about, but to make space for your boards to actually talk about vision and ministry, as opposed
to have an idea. Yeah.
So,
yeah. Hey, Heather.
Hello.
Good to see you.
Good seeing you.
Dan, what do you think about at Edgeboro? Can you think of anybody other than you that might be interested in learning more? Are there things that you think you might want to share with some of the lay leaders there, in terms of skills building or whatever?
I'd have to think about that a little bit, but perhaps I think what we're doing now isn't it's a little bit different, but we are doing a great resource I found through another leadership cohort called the Strengths Finder Assessment, and put out by Gallup. And so what that assessment does is, out of 34 descriptive strength and leadership goals, the assessment gives you your top 5. And so our goal, and this is we're in the process of it, so our goal in August is to sort of see how all of our strengths are distributed across a joint board and a church staff, and hopefully that can kind of help us figure out, well, how can we then interact differently with each other? So, for example, instead of sort of getting to a point in the meeting where we, all are brainstorming different ideas of what to do about this particular issue, we would know then, okay, well, here are the, 3 people on our board of elders that get a lot of energy, that are really good at and gifted at brainstorming. So, okay, as far as process goes, let's give it to those 3 people to come up with an idea to come back next meeting with. And then we'll have another, group of people that are really good at perhaps either polishing an idea or networking to get people behind an idea, or just communicating, or there are different words than just cheerleading, but positivity behind it too. So I think that'll allow us to kind of position ourselves a little better, maybe use our time a little more efficiently, because we'll all be pretty well versed in what we can do. And then we'll also be able to see, hey, are there any gaps of gifts that we don't have on our board currently that we will need to reach out to somebody else for? And so I feel like that hopefully, as we kind of, I mean, of course, that will take some practice to get into it, but I hope that that will make our kind of our decision-making processes a little bit more streamlined, so that way we at least know, oh, hey, we've come to a brainstorming part of our discernment here. We're going to delegate that work to these people, or oh, we're into the point where we have to get volunteers or make announcements. We're going to delegate to these people, so that way we don't have to spend time in the meeting and be like, well, who's going to do this now, and just kind of crickets, who's going to sign up for this. And so that's kind of what we're doing now, but hopefully shifting more. I'm hoping to find more opportunities to, kind of educate people about not only themselves, and I hope this is a useful tool, for them just personally, like, here are the 5 things that if I do these gifts, if I look at them and do them in my life, I know they'll give me energy and keep me away from burnout, which is really a helpful tool, knowledge to have in general these days, it feels like. I'm hoping to find more resources that are like that can be applicable in church function, but as well as just in general life function. And so it seems like some of these, I'm excited to dive into some of these websites and just kind of see what's there. They look like it could be a I honestly need to kind of sit down and think like, well, what might we need to do now? Because there's probably a resource for that already. So I'm excited to have an opportunity to do that. So I knew about Faith Lead. I didn't know about these other 2. I haven't used Faith Lead that much either, but I definitely hadn't heard of these other 2 websites. So I'm definitely looking forward to, as you did before, just click around and see what's there and how it works and all that stuff.
Yeah. Well, it was interesting. Beth Hayes turned around to Lifelong Faith, and there's another one that vibrantfaith.com. I think you might have to subscribe to some of that to get some of its content, but both of those are faith formation specific, which I just thought, as a pastor, it was interesting to me that I had not heard about them, because I think that they market more to professional Christian educators. And that's great, except for like in the Northern Province, there aren't a lot of professional Christian educators. So there are a lot of churches that just don't even know that those resources exist. And I think for smaller congregations, that some of those tools are still really helpful and valuable in figuring out what do we want to do next. And I wrote down the Strengths Finder. I'll have to put that on our list of resources that people can use. There's another one that I heard about called Volunteer Accelerator, which is a kind of a way to help people find out what they're good at and how to get connected. They're using it at Home Moravian Church, I think. But they've said that it was like a really useful tool for what you're talking about, Dan, for like the next step of like, now that you know what the strengths are, what do you do with them?
I'll have to check that out too. Because the Strengths Finder resource is not a ministry specific, like it is a business world kind of resource. Yeah. And so part of our job is to translate into our setting, but I mean it still does a really great job. I think a more detailed job than most of our spiritual gift inventories that we've all done before. And really does a good job in explaining, okay, how do you work with someone if you have a board member or just a congregation member, how do you work with someone with these particular gifts, and how can they work with you too? I'm excited to use that. But I'll Volunteer Accelerator. I just found it online too, so I'll see what we can do with that. I see some quizzes and results and.
Yeah, and so they talked about it was helping them find, kind of get people, because I think, as you said, Margie, like you've done lots of the same things. People know what they volunteer for, and so what would happen at Freeze if everybody volunteered for some new thing, like even if it was an existing thing, but you switched and did something different, like what would that look like, and what would people learn? not just about themselves, but about their congregation, their community, that might be really, really helpful. I don't know if
Go ahead.
You go ahead.
It's funny that you sort of use that example of switching things around a little bit. I'm a chicken pie lady, and we made chicken pies yesterday, and our leader, who's 96, retired this year. So we are splitting up the leadership, of course, and because none of us wants to do what she did, right?
Yeah.
And we get there around the table we got our dough, we got our chicken, and it was like, musical chairs around the table, because somebody said, well, I've got to go make a phone call, and somebody else would say, well, I'll come over there and do that, and then this person would move over here and do. We had so much fun. It was energizing. This is big deal work. It'll wear you out, but we were energized, and our cordiality toward one. We didn't get irritable toward the end of the.
That's good.
There's
Yeah.
always been a bunch of women, you want to stay nice, and that's a good idea. That's a good idea, that moving around, and if we could get the men to do that in particular, they've got their spots,
Yeah, well, it depends on how long you've been doing stuff too. I know, well, I served at Edgeboro. I mean, I know that there were, mint makers and candle makers, and there are kind of teams that are existing that don't do a lot of switching, which is okay until somebody needs a break. It's really intense, and that's true in every church I've served and every church I've ever heard about. And so I think some of these things that we do help us just get out of our head and out of our experience a little bit to ask a different question.
Using any muscle, just brain muscle, heart muscle.
So I think I'm hoping that these conversations will kind of continue to grow. I'd love for us to get a stronger network of people who know and talk to each other about what's going on, and hearing those stories, to be able to come back and be like, well, at my church, when we make, chicken pies, to come to that making and say, hey, how about we switch it up? And if you're usually rolling dough, how about we, for 30 minutes, we switch up jobs just to see what happens. Like, I hear at Freeze, they did it and it was really fun, like that kind of thing too. I think churches we get ourselves caught up in that, like we have to make a big sweeping change for it to be effective or important. And actually, I think it's the smaller incremental kind of openness to different new ideas that maybe will have the greatest impact. Again, that's why you do evaluation, because you can measure that. You can say, hey, last year we did this little thing. What changed about it? We got 10 people to read this book and discuss it. Have we noticed in the last year any more innovation or ideas that have been popping up that we didn't see before? Or, I think that's that kind of thing when you're thinking about congregational development in general, is that it's almost about cultivating space. It's not so much about content as creating space to have the conversation, and to allow people and the Spirit to move in us, right? Like that we can get pretty excited if we only get out of the way. But I am definitely the poster child for, I like doing things the way that I like to do them, the way that I know how to do them, the way I feel most confident doing them. And so I think practicing a little bit of that, like, I don't know how to do this, is good for us, even though in the moment it doesn't always feel great. So how do we do that together?
I hope taught my grandson how to pick chicken.
Oh,
I'm
yeah.
12 years old, and he's sitting there picking chicken, and I wouldn't have thought to teach him to pick chicken. I'm not sure I wanted him picking my chicken.
Yeah, well, I did that when I was growing up. That was our fundraiser. What did y'all do in Wisconsin, Dan? Like when you had fundraisers for youth, what did y'all?
We did some of that, but of course, chicken pie is not like wasn't
Yeah.
was nearly as big of a thing as it is down there. So, I mean, we did all sorts of, I mean, whatever came to mind. Yeah, there wasn't really it was usually some kind of dinner that we would serve at or something like that. And then that was kind of, it's still kind of an older model of, fundraising, that sort of thing, like a spaghetti dinner or whatever,
Yeah.
but it was just really whatever. I mean, I remember selling pizzas or just, whatever.
Yeah. I remember
No rhyme or reason.
well, I think making dinner would be the same thing, that like the youth group, we had a lot of fun, like preparing the meal or preparing the chicken pies. Like that was like the best part. Staying up late. I mean, we made chicken pies. We used to make hundreds of chicken pies at a time. And so we'd work Friday night late and then Saturday. And those are some interesting youth group activities, but fun.
Yeah.
It certainly contributed to who I am today. So that's something.
Yep, absolutely. I will share one quick resource to Google is ELCA World Hunger. They have all kinds of, I mean, they'll send you resources for free if you request of like, how to do like a backpack ministry, or here's a how-to guide for a community garden, or just like VBS curriculums. And there's a whole bunch of stuff, like those like hunger. I mean, those like, what are they, 30-hour famine? I forget what it was called, but like they're like variations on that. I don't think it's exactly the same thing, but different like hunger. When I did a program at Tech last year, they actually have a walk for water that you set up with different scenarios that you actually walk around with. The whole point being, in many parts of the world, people will travel for miles to get clean drinking water. And so they kind of set up a simulation. You set up like a 1/10 mile track with signs along the way, and you have a small group like carry gallons of water at a time. So it's supposed to be a little bit strenuous as they kind of walk through this, a scenario about how, a boy traveling to go for water, somewhere, his bike breaks and you have to stop or, lose water or whatever. Or, the woman gets, travels to the river to get water, but ends up getting sick. And then there's, different kind of so that was kind of a neat program. And again, all that was for free.
Mm-hmm.
Printed off all the signs and stuff like that, and it was a great simulation for that. So there's a ton of stuff like that. If there isn't like a clean website link, because it's on the ELCA website itself and it's just a different page of it, but if you Google ELCA World Hunger and ELCA World Hunger resources, that'll come up, and there's a whole bunch of, they'll send you booklets and stuff for free, so that was pretty cool. So something
I really appreciate you sharing that. That's like, those are the kinds of things that are super helpful when you're looking around for things that are already created.
Mm-hmm. And that's the goal, right? A lot of this stuff is like, well, we need to do something on this, but I'm sure it's been created already, right? Why create the wheel and recreate the wheel? So,
well, I think that's one of the beautiful things about our full communion partnerships too, is that we can use things that we know kind of fit with who we are, because we've already, somebody's already done the work of making sure that that's the case. But that's not always important either. I think sometimes just taking something that's really cool and helpful and adapting it, like at Tech in your camp program, I'm sure that was part of a larger conversation. And so how does that fit in with what we're talking about, and how do we do that? When here, like Synod, there's a number of resolutions that came out about a team for housing justice, for advocacy and justice in other ways. And so, no problem. There's a lot to be brought into the conversation. So it's cool to have things like that can be additional.
I wonder if I was looking real quick, there might be something on that too, even in this page, but to bring in other reasons. Yeah.
I'll make sure to share it with that team as they get kind of put together. But yeah, I was, and when I don't know, is there any place else that you go for continuing education? Like what kinds of things do you use?
More local stuff.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, I'm of course on the email list for the seminary. There's our local council of churches, the Lehigh Valley Council of Churches.
They do a really good job of creating stuff.
Yeah, they do. Yeah. So between those two, they kind of keep me busy. I mean, the archives, which actually I'm hopping off to, go to the Hair and Hoot one here in a little bit. They've seemed like they've been doing some cool webinar stuff too. So that seems to keep me pretty busy as well. So.
Okay, I got my book. Well, I don't have anything else, but thanks for dropping in, Dan. It was good to see you. I'm glad things are going well. Are you going to Mount Morris this summer, or are you at Camp Hope this year?
No, we are at Camp Hope. We're actually doing the same. Actually, we'll be using the Walk for Water, I guess, this year, because we're doing so Justin and I did a program together last year, so we'll be doing the same program out at Camp Hope this year. So yeah, that's about a month, 5 weeks away. So looking forward to it.
That's cool. Yeah, I'll be at Laurel Ridge this year. So I've been to Laurel Ridge since it's been 15 years since I've been to Laurel Ridge for summer camp. So I'm pretty excited. I'm gonna dean one of the mission camps, and so it'll be interesting. Cool. I didn't have to write the program. I just get to like they literally like, do you want to do it? Here's the program. I was like, sure. It sounds really simple. I'd be glad to do that. And
I don't have to.
My parents are bringing my kids, and so my kids are going to get to explore the mountain for the week while I'm up there doing the deaning part. So it'll be pretty cool.
That's cool. Nice. Well, enjoy.
I will, and you too, and have a good. I hope the Hair and Hoot presentation is good. Sounded interesting.
Yes, I hope so too. We'll see. They sent us a full folder and all that stuff, so we'll see.
Oh wow.
That'll be good.
I guess it's not surprising. The archives, they like their paper and their information.
I think so too, and they got some nice printing and all that stuff going on. So, but hey, I appreciate the heads up with these websites. These look really cool. I'll have to check them out.
Awesome. All right, I'll talk to you later.
All right, bye. See y'all.